Hi everyone, my name is Kirby. This is my chapter 6 video discussion for Oceanus. So I'm going to go over things I learned, found interesting, things I want to learn more about, and then some questions for the class regarding the content we went over. So firstly, what I learned about the heat budget in reference to the Earth and the heat exchange. So if the exchange is unequal, Earth can become colder or hotter depending on the inequality in the equation. Then secondly, the land and sea respond differently to solar radiation. Land generally has a low heat capacity, which then equates to larger temperature changes being able to be noticed, versus the ocean has a relatively high heat capacity, which means there's little temperature changes seen there. Then I found it interesting, I guess more about what I learned, because I didn't know it was called this, but when in the section I've heard about the broken sheets of ice, it said that the broken sheets of ice can become what's called pancakes, which, I guess it kind of looks like it, but I found that a little intriguing. Is something also I learned about that regarding those sheets being called pancakes as they're drifting through and being broken. Then next, what I found interesting, that there are different classifications of sea ice. So obviously I knew about glaciers, icebergs, blah, blah, blah. But I guess I didn't realize that there was a movement classification about the sea ice. So first one was the fast ice, then secondly there was the drift ice, and then thirdly the pack ice. Then the second thing I found interesting was that the glacier that sunk the Titanic was suspected to come from Greenland. So I found that really interesting that they were able to track that back to Greenland. So which will come later on about more things I want to learn about in reference to that. And then thirdly, for things that I found interesting, was the density of air is controlled by 3 variables, which are temperature, the amount of water vapor in the air, and then the altitude. I guess in my head I thought there would be way more factors that played into it, which I'm sure the 3 variables are not simplistic. And then moving on to things I want to learn more about. So I kind of touched on the iceberg thing, the glaciers. But I'd be interested in learning more about the tracking process of the iceberg. So they kind of touched on a little bit about the different locations of like Greenland and just like the different originations of where it comes, and the streams that go down. But it'd be interesting in how they track that. Would be something that would be interesting to expand my knowledge on. And then secondly, the fluctuation in the ozone hole sizes. So obviously the hole in the ozone layer is always been, I shouldn't say always, but at least in my lifetime has been a hot topic that people generally know about, and we're not really sure what to do about. So it'd be interesting to study a little bit more about the hole sizes, because it was talking about the different temperatures and how that affects the size of the hole in different areas. So I'd be interested in learning more about how that temperature role plays in the size of the hole. Then thirdly, the section that kind of talked about the wind and the effects of rotation on it. I thought that was kind of interesting. Something I hadn't really studied before. We've looked at winds or trade winds or whatnot in school and geography and stuff when we go through the different patterns, but I found that section to be quite intriguing. Something I'd be interested in looking into more, which actually then plays into one of my 3 questions, which is how scientists determined the wind patterns. So obviously we know them, and there's maps now about the different patterns of wind, of the wind cycles, I guess is what you'd say. But it's kind of never really touched on how exactly they came about that, because obviously Earth is a large planet, and you can't just step back and be like, oh, I see the wind. So it'd be interesting to see how they came about creating those maps, whether it was with satellites or some special technology. Secondly, what is the worst monsoon documented? Since they talked a little bit more about those kind of items in the chapter. And then thirdly, how are rain shadows formed? So I found that part a little interesting. I didn't really know that was a thing. So, what's kind of the process for that? So that is my chapter 6 discussion.